You about Bangladesh secret strategy, how they made it rich. It's all about textile industry. So let's start it. Bangladesh is the second only to China is producing clothing for the world. Textile is the one of the key sector for in Bangladesh because it brings almost 80% of their foreign currency. It has been one of the primary engine of growth in the nation of 164 million people. The industry earns more than $35 billion a year from export and employs of 4 million people, a large majority of whom are women. So in 1950, right after its independence, Bangladesh was one of the poorest country in the world. And from you know that the past 50 years, Bangladesh gone from being a poverty-infected country with a poverty rate of 80% to becoming one of the fastest growing country in the world. GDP of $400 billion and a poverty rate of less than 12%. And one of the most important reason for this growth is the textile revolution of growth as we started, because of which the country went from being a no one to becoming the second largest ready-made garments exporter in the world. In fact, from 2011 to 2019, Bangladesh textile export has more than doubled from just $14.6 billion in 2011 to $33.1 billion in 2019. And even in 2020, they exported $28 billion worth of garments. And all of this happened because of the extraordinary policies implemented by the government of Bangladesh. So the question is, what were these policies? How they did turn Bangladesh into the second largest exporter of ready-made garments? And most importantly, what are the study material to help you understand the incredible rise of Bangladesh? So let's start it. In the basic, now if you remember, in, if an underdeveloped nation wants to grow, what are these steps? Number one, identify an important asset with the country. Number two, use that asset to the credit value in the global economy. Number three, then create a strong clientele for cash flow. Number four, use this cash flow to create more asset and then add more value to the global economy, and then the cycle will keep continuing. In case of Dubai, they identify oil, sold it to the world, made money, and then expanded to the maritime trade facilities. Then they made money again and then build their business ecosystem. But in case of Bangladesh, the case was little different. You see, when you have little an asset like an oil which is not available elsewhere in large quantity, you can actually command a price tag over your asset and then make money. In this case, the Middle Eastern countries actually formed something called the organization, which is OPEC, a petroleum exporting countries, is in a formal cartel, and using this cartel they actually started commanding the price that they want. As a result, endless amount of money actually flooded into the Middle East. But in case of Bangladesh, their asset was cheap labor because ever since its independence, the Bangladesh did not any opportunity to find jobs at home. So in case of labor, the catch is that you are always in competition with the rival to grab the opportunity. In this case, Bangladesh in direct competition with none other than China itself. To tell you about it, in 1978, the Chinese had just opened up their economy and they literally became the manufacturing hub of the world for not just textile but every other industry. Now, usually, if you take any industry, they do not generally rely on just one country but diversify their outsourcing into different countries for manufacturing. This is done so that in case of one country gets into trouble, like Russia did or like Pakistan did, then their operation would not be entirely halted. In case of the textile industry, companies like Zara or other companies usually outsource their project to countries like China, Vietnam, Indonesia, Cambodia, and Bangladesh. Now, during the 1980s and 90s, China was hands down the leader of manufacturing, and because of its ultra cheap labor cost, they were by far the first preference for any country to set up their manufacturing unit. But during that time, even Bangladesh was slowly and steadily improving, and they did everything in their capacity build a conducive business ecosystem in Bangladesh. In order to do that, they they brought in some incredible policy that addressed three of the most critical problems faced by the businessman in Bangladesh. The first of this problem was the unavailability of credit to buy machinery, which means if a businessman is just starting up and he needs a machinery worth 50 to 60 lakh, the banking system was too rigid to offer these loans to businessmen, even if they had a sure shot at profit. Secondly, even after this machinery is paid for, the import duty was another big barrier in this case. Even if a low import duty of 5% is applied on a machinery where 10 crore, that itself is 50 lakh of import duty, and this was a big entry barrier for any businessman to start his business. And lastly, there was infrastructure issue, as and even if your factory is completely built, if there are frequent power shortages, then it leads to loss in productivity. If you do not have good highways in your country, then it leads to logistics issue, which again causes losses. These were the three critical problems that were being faced by the businessmen of Bangladesh, because always they were not able to start a business, because obviously they are not able to employ more people. As a result, the economy itself was taking a hit. This is when the Bangladesh government actually realized that they have to do something if they want to grow and progress. This is when the Bangladesh government actually came up with three incredible policies that changed the face of Bangladesh forever. The question is, what was the policies and how did they suddenly change the face of Bangladesh? Well, the first policy, the Bangladesh government came up with something called back-to-back letter of credit system. Now let's try to understand how this works. Using a simple story, let's say there is a company A that is a US selling heavy textile machinery. Company B is a trading firm that is based in elsewhere in any country which is trustworthy. And C in Bangladesh want to purchase heavy machinery worth 5 crore rupees. So if you see in this arrangement, the buyer want to buy, the seller want to sell, and the broker want to make money. But the problem is here is that the US company does not trust company C in Bangladesh, because it's an underdeveloped nation, and any political or community it might actually put 5 crore rupee at risk. But you see, the Indian broker B want to ensure that the trade is made so that he receive his commission. So here's where the back-to-back letter of credit comes in handy. What happened in this strategy is that company will go to a reputational institution in Bangladesh and get it into issue something called the letter of credit with broker B as the beneficiary. So basically, the bank in Bangladesh tells the Indian broker, don't worry, I will make the payment of 5 crore with 20 lakh in commission to you on behalf company C. And now that the broker has an assurance from a reputed bank, he will take that letter of credit to go to his reputed bank in India and ask them to issue another letter of credit to company A in the US. So here's where the Indian bank assures the American company that the bank will pay the company 5 crore rupees on behalf of the broker. So now company A feels safe about the Indian bank paying them money, and now they ship their heavy machinery knowing that once the transaction is complete, it will be paid by the Indian bank. So at the end of the day, the broker is also assured about being paid by the Bangladeshi bank, and the American company is assured about being paid by the Indian bank. So this way the credit risk has been removed from the transaction and all the parties have been benefited. This made it extremely easy for the Bangladesh businessmen to actually set up their textile manufacturing business. Eventually, that ended up giving jobs to millions of people in Bangladesh, and this is where the second policy came. And now, if you look at the above example, we'll see that if the Bangladesh businessman is imposed with an import duty of just 5%, then he has to pay 25% lakh rupees alone. Okay, but at the same time, if the Bangladesh government decided to do away the import duty, then the government will lose out on a significant amount of income. So here is where the Bangladeshi government came up with a policy innovation called the policy of duty drawback facility through bonded warehouse. If Sham wants to import his machinery, raw materials, and replacement without import duty, then all the finished product that he produces using these materials must be kept in bonded warehouses wherein the product must compulsory be used for exports only. And this is checked by the special custom authorities who actually check the import and export containers going to and from the bonded factory. This way the Bangladeshi government is able to provide ease of businesses for the businessmen who are exporting the product, and at the same time they do not lose out on the import duty income for all the domestic products. And lastly, in spite of all the political instability, Bangladesh has improved its infrastructure and connectivity by a large extent, and they have done that through transportation and logistics improvement. This is how Bangladesh had been laying its foundation since 30 years from 1971 to 2001. And here's where the table started turning. From early 2000 onward, the Chinese labor cost started increasing. In fact, by 2012, the labor cost in China was so high as compared to Bangladesh that it had reached around 4 to 500 per month per worker in Bangladesh. During the same time, the average monthly salary for the garment worker was only 70 to $100 per month per worker. Okay, let alone Europe and US, even the Chinese factories started outsourcing their work to Bangladesh factories. Now the question over here is why only Bangladesh, why not Indonesia or Cambodia? Well, the simple answer for that is Bangladesh was fully equipped with infrastructure and workers to embrace the opportunity that was at its doorstep. While Indonesia had 2450 2415 factories in 2012, Vietnam had 2 in 2000, Cambodia and 260, whereas Bangladesh alone had 5,000 RNG factory with the workforce of 3.6 million workers or 36 lakh workers. As a result, if you look at the growth of Bangladesh textile export, you will see that from 2011 to 2019, Bangladesh textile export more than doubled from $14.6 billion in 2011 to 33.1 billion in 2019. And even during the pandemic, they exported $28 billion worth of ready-made garments. This is how by identify a rising industry by creating a conducive business ecosystem with policy innovation and most importantly by laying a foundational infrastructure and upcoming opportunity. Bangladesh today stands as one of the fastest growing country in the world. And just to give you a reality check, Bangladesh story is not a fairy tale at all, and it also has some very, very dark side that you never want to experience. And the textile industry continues to grow. The situation looks set to get worse. The Bangladesh government says it's doing all it can to crack down on child labor, but there is little evidence of that. This factory environmental expert says unplanned development called run industries, brick factories, and construction workers have made the situation worse. Textile industry produce around 56 billion liters of contaminated water a year. Assimilated groups increasingly demanding a state founded on Islamic law. In recent years, dozens of free thinkers, secular activists, members of religion, minorities, and outsiders have been killed by radical Islamists. We wonder what future awaits Bangladesh. So, here is story. What wonder what future these are about hazard working conditions that have been led to horrific accident, child labor that is ruling the life of thousands of children, and the systematic persecution of Hindus which is hidden in plain sight. And lastly, the biggest threat for Bangladesh is that all of these policies innovation have been so focused on textile industry that now that the continuous country is actually becoming over dependent on just one sector, wherein the R&D sector around accounts for more than 80% of their total export revenue as of 2021. So if anything happened to this industry, the country is again going to collapse into economic crisis. And this brings me to the that most important point of the episode, and that are the study material to help you understand the different dimension of the rise of Bangladesh. So, attaching a McKinsey report of both 2012 and 2021, that is a detailed analysis of the RMG sector of Bangladesh. Secondly, there is this wonderful study done by Brookings that actually outlines the efforts taken by the country to achieve this extraordinary growth of this RMG sector. And lastly, I am attaching a short note on both back to that letter of credit system and bonded warehouse, which will help you understand these concepts better. And if there are any other study material that I find to be interesting, I will attach all of them in the same list. That's all from my side for today, guys. If you learned something valuable, please make sure like, share, subscribe, and comment. Thank you.